it's nice to be spurred on by some negativity to prove them wrong and a little bit of revenge, a little teeny tiny bit of revenge. But at the end of the day, those people aren't important enough even to mention because by name, because the people that love you are the people that share your success. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hey, baby. Okay, so this is my neighbor, Christina, and this is Nessus. So I was not able to hug this baby for a year because of COVID, and so I'm so excited to just see this baby. They were my son used to call Christina neighbor because she was our neighbor across the street, and he would say that's neighbor. So for years he would go, and I said I'm going to see neighbor. He's like, what? Yes. So
I've never seen him clap, and he's clapping like
I
crazy.
saw that. Oh, he's the cutest. And we were just, it's torture to have a cute baby across the street from you and not be able to hug them. I'd be like, hello, baby. And he's like, hi. I'm like, ah.
Well, he's just further proof how you transcend all demographics with
Right?
your gifts.
Tiny, cute babies, yes.
But yeah, you met with our students this afternoon, and I thought that was such a wonderful lesson and thing for them to hear about. Sometimes you're not going to get support, and sometimes people are going to reject you or
Yes.
make it harder for you, and you can use that to motivate you and to spur it on, or you can let it stop you, and you really gave them that motivation to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all got rejected, right? Like the pandemic was a rejection of all the plans we had and the things we were doing and the marathons we're going to run, the weddings we're going to go, the book tour we were supposed to have, all of those things. And I think that it's important to know that you can get through things. I mean, I got a rejection. I pitched a magazine that I really want to write for, and they're like, try next time. I'm like, darn it. And you feel bad for about 30 seconds, and you go, okay, next. Because you're never going to stop getting rejected. I mean, there's actors who have Oscars who go out for roles they don't get or who want things. So what are you going to do? What you're going to do is keep going.
So aside from don't let the haters get you down, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Oh my gosh. Well, what I said was, by the way, if you write, you're a writer. You might aspire to be a writer who gets paid money, which is the next thing. But I know so many people, like, I'm in writers groups and stuff on Facebook and things, and people go, I'm an aspiring writer. It's like, no. If you write, if that's where you are a writer. And I think people think it's like this esoteric thing, or you have to look a certain way or be a certain way or have a certain demeanor, or you have to suffer in a certain way to be a writer. And I think you just have to like pick up a pen and write, or get into a computer and write and say the things that are on your mind. And I believe that. I think the best advice is don't let anybody tell you who you're not. Don't let anybody tell you who you are. Don't let anybody tell you who you're not. And just make sure that you check in with yourself and say, is this what I'm supposed to do? Because I know plenty of writers who thought I'm gonna be a sports writer, and then they go, wait a minute, I'm gonna be an investigative reporter. One of our best investigative reporters at the Post, Joe Capozzi, was a baseball writer for years, and turns out he was really, really good as an investigative reporter. You have different gifts, you have different things, and I think you have to give yourself permission to have. Someone was asking me today that they said, well, how do you deal with things when you're trying to write something and it doesn't come? And I said, sometimes it's you. Like, there'll be a word sometimes, like, this word is brilliant, this is gonna make this sentence, and it sucks, and I have to walk away from it, come back, and I realize that I was so fixated on this thing that I thought was brilliant, this phrase, no one's ever said that before, and A, that's not true, it's never true, and B, everything was sticking on that one thing. So most of the time, it's that's not working. And there's that phrase, was it Faulkner? I think it was attributed to "kill your darlings." That you have this thing that's the best thing ever, and sometimes you got to get rid of it. To like. So yeah, just keep going and figure out when you're sticking yourself.
Get out of your own way.
Get out of your own. Yes, and I think in life that is honestly one of the most important things. Get out of your own way.
Well, let's talk about your book and your writing.
Yes.
So, Dee Perry was a COVID hire. You were a COVID author.
Oh, y'all.
Your book debuted in 2020. So a lot has changed since then. Tell us a little bit about the reception of the book and what's changed.
The reception of the book was really good critically. The sales of the book have been okay. I think a lot of it, there's a group of us called Lockdown Literature. It's a group of people whose books all came out between like February and like August. And we have done readings. I went up to Boston last year and did a reading, and did a reading in New York last year, and we've really supported each other. We're going to be doing, Lord Will and the Creek Don't Rise, and this happens. We're going to be on a panel about memoir, some of us, in Philadelphia in March. So here's the thing. Here's a perfect example. I had this big book party with James Patterson, sitting where Rachel is sitting, interviewing me, and we're laughing. Everything is laughing. We're laughing. And I remember I coughed, and everyone went, because it was right before COVID. And everyone's like, and I joke. I go, I don't have COVID. And I didn't. But literally, the book came out the next week. And then the next week, it was the 10th, the book came out, and the 17th was the first lockdown in Palm Beach County. And I went, oh dear. And so it was supposed to be on the Today Show. That got canceled. I wound up doing it on literally from my, right across from Christina, from my living room in West Palm Beach. All these things was to do all these festivals and reading. I'm like, bloop, 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 bloop. And so I found out that people really wanted to read about someone that something crappy happened through that got through. And they wanted to read about the messiness of it, because the book is, you don't have to raise your hand who's read it, but it writes about the messy parts of grief, and which it's all messy, and the parts where you're mad at God, and you're yelling at people, and you're eating and drinking too much, and you're like just not sure what the hell just happened to your life. And I was very honest about it, because I felt like what's a physical weight I had to get off my chest. Like I had to write these words and get them out. And it turns out that people in COVID wanted to read something about someone who's telling the truth about a traumatic thing that had happened to them, and that it wasn't all great. Because the great thing would be if my husband was still alive. That's the only way this ends happily, right? It ends as happily as it can, but like the normal that I thought wasn't coming back, and the normal that we thought wasn't coming back. And it has reached people, both widowed people and grieving people, and people who just wanted to laugh at something inappropriate, because there's a lot of inappropriate laughter in the book. Like in the first 2 pages, when I'm trying to pick out a grave over at I forget the name of it, where Scott is, over on the corner of, is that Kirk in Lake Worth? Yes. There's a convenience store over there, but there's a cemetery, and they're selling the cemetery plot, and I'm hungry, and I realize I'm hungry, and Melanie, who's just gone back to the hotel room to do some work, she came down, literally, he died at 3 o'clock in the morning, and by that afternoon, my sister and my mother and my best friend were there in my living room. I came into my living room, and she was sitting there on the couch. So the next day we go, we're looking at the caskets and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. And she goes, I got a bag of chips I brought off the plane. And she tosses me the bag of chips. And I'm like, blah, 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 like I was when I came to Palm Beach Post, blah, 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 blah. And my mother goes, you're dripping chips on the dead people. And we go, and then we're like, oh, is it appropriate to be laughing about this? At this? No, probably not. It's okay. We're cool. So, yeah. So that's pretty much, that's what's in the book. So, I think people related to that. They related to this moment we were supposed to be rallying, and we didn't know what we were rallying for. And we were supposed to be, holding out hope, because we had no idea how long this was going to last. We had no idea what was going to happen. And so many people have said to me, I felt nuts, and you were nuts. And it's like, yes, I was. So thank you. And so I think that it's reached people in a way. I would like it to sell more books, so please keep buying my book. But
For sale after the
please
meeting.
for sale, please buy my book. But I think that the most important thing, also go to your libraries. You don't have to buy it. Go to your libraries. If you have one and you've read it, give it to your friends. All of that. But I think that me being, I was telling them earlier, I wrote the book I wanted to read that I wish I had when I was looking for things to read that wasn't about the journey, that was about the messy part of it. And I wrote about that. And I think, like I said, things did get better. Things have gotten better. Things do get better, hopefully. But I was happy that people responded to that part. So,
Yeah, in one of your blog posts, you talked about some of the reviews of it as a grief memoir, and for me, it felt much more like a survival memoir. It was how you get through, like you said, the messy parts. And anyone who's lost someone and gone through grief knows that there's these crazy ups and downs. I remember my father passed away, and we're at the cemetery picking out his gravesite, and they're driving us in the golf cart, and we have to go way out to the boonies to find an open spot. And like now thinking, I said, "Oh, I guess everyone's dying to get in here." And yeah, well, and it wasn't that I wasn't devastated about the death of my father. It was a coping in that moment, And so to hear someone else sort of talk about, yeah, I don't look like the perfect, I'm going to make weird jokes sometimes. It meant a lot.
That was the other thing too, because we started pitching it. They were like, "It's a funny grief memoir." People were like, "Why? What is that?" And I didn't want it to be. It wasn't funny like a Tyler Perry movie. It wasn't like falling into the casket and having Medea cry and all. It wasn't that at all. And I didn't. And it wasn't. I didn't want it to try too hard because I've read a couple of grief memoirs where it was like, "Here's the funny widow," and it's like she was trying. They were trying too hard to be cool or to be like above it all. It's like, how can you be above it? Your husband died. I'm above nothing at this point. But I was just like, my weirdness connected to other people's weirdness, and I guess that's a really good thing. So.
Well, I'll just ask one more question, and then maybe we could hear your wonderful weird story. So one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking parts was your struggle to think about how to talk to Brooks about this, your son. And now he's 8 years old, and that's maybe still a little too young to read the book. But I wonder, has he or will he one day read the story?
He is very well aware of it. Sometimes he'll be like, "Oh, I've got a thing on Zoom about my book." He goes, "Yes, you wrote a book. Look at you." Although right before it came out, I had just some bound copies that I went to Camp Widow, which is a cool thing. I was this keynote speaker in Toronto in 2019 when it was going to be awesome and we were going to have this big tour. I had no idea, but we had some bound copies, and he came with me with my mom. He hated Toronto because it was too cold, and he whined about it the entire time. But he fell in love with Denny's because it was Denny's right near our hotel. He kept going, "Let's go back to that restaurant we went to, Denny's." But he walked around with the box of books and walked with people. My mother wrote a book. Have a book. And they're like, "Great." And they were like, "Is that it's my hype man." He's walking around because it was like this little thin valley. He was like, "Hello, how are you? Have a book. Hello, how are you? Have a book." So it's weird for him because I wrote a book and he knows he's in it as a baby, and it's awful that he doesn't remember Scott because he was 2, not quite 2, and it's terrible. So I talked to him about, he asked me, because he doesn't remember really about like how I told him. And I said, "Dude, I had no idea how to do it." And he thinks it's hilarious that, because first of all, kids think it's funny when you tell them stories about themselves and also when you admit that you're dumb. So I was like, "Dude, I tried so many times. I thought you knew." I thought, it was like, "He's gone." And he was like, "What does that mean?" It's like, "I don't know. Apparently you didn't either." And I had to keep telling you. So, and a couple parents have said that to me, that they're like, "How do you talk about it?" So I guess, like I said, I did a terrible job of it apparently in the beginning. But he gets it. It's, I try as much as I can to keep that alive without having a shrine, without like being like some, who's from the 70s? Who was like a kid in the 70s? Okay, so there's this episode of Little House on the Prairie Where do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so Laura gets kidnapped by this woman whose daughter was Laura's age. You know this episode? Whose daughter was Laura's age when she died, and she kept the dolls in the room and everything. So every time I would think about that, I would laugh hysterically and inappropriately because I was like, I can't be that person. I can't like have everything the same. And it helped me move too. Although I still do have a lot of Ravens jerseys that I and I hats and stuff like that. But I didn't want to be that crazy person that kept everything exactly the same. And some people need that to heal. Some people need to get through that. Like I said, having to move from that house not long after Scott died was really actually I think a blessing. Because I even if I hung things or whatever, it had to be in a different way. And I don't want my son to feel as if he's living in a museum, you know, and I don't want him to my grief to be his grief. You know, he has his own, which is weird for me because you want to fix everything, you know. And I tried, like I said in the book, I tried really hard to make it easier for him and fail miserably. So I guess that's a lesson as a parent. Sometimes you will just fail miserably. You're gonna try really hard to do everything right and to spare people pain. And there's gonna come. It's like this. I said to my mother once, it's like the spindle in Sleeping Beauty, where they tried to hide all the bad things from her, and she found it anyway, and she still pricked her finger. You're gonna, you're gonna prick your finger.
So one day he'll read it and he'll have this beautiful account that'll help him understand what you went through.
I hope so, and that I think mostly he's gonna be like, oh my God, she said all this stuff. She wrote all this stuff. And I'll say this before I read. One of the questions on the memoir panel that I'm going to be on in Philadelphia that all of us were supposed to answer, and then we'll figure out who had the funniest or the best answer, was about asking for permission. Like, if you write about people in your life, like, how do you approach people, particularly if it's something that's difficult? One of my friends from the writers group wrote this really beautiful piece about, he'd written this searing memoir about his family, and then they were all quarantined together. And the boxes of books came when he was quarantined, and he tried to hide them from them, and they're like, what's that, Julian? There's like nothing. Like, what is it? So his brother, the minute he left the room, grabbed the book, and he walks around the house, they're all reading the book. He's like, no! And that's fine. Everything was fine. But yeah, it's really kind of like, oh, yeah. So I think that he's going to read it and go, what did you do? Why would you say that? So, but I told people that I named, I called them and said, here is your chapter. And I called my grandmother and said, there will be cursing. And she's like, fine. She goes, I'm not happy about the language, but it's a very good book. It's like, thanks. And she just turned 95. So, she's amazing. So she disapproves of that greatly. And that's cool. It's cool. It's fine. So do you want something funny or something sad? Funny. Me too. Okay, so this is a funny chapter about a funeral. But I swear it's funny. It really is. It really is. Okay. And I might not read the whole thing, but anyway. Most of the titles are named after, or come from TV show theme songs. Because it seemed funny to me at the time. Okay. I'm going to read it, and then if anyone could sing it for me, that would be awesome. It would be funny. Okay, here's a quiz. What TV show is this? It's called To a Deluxe Apartment in the Sky. Thank you. I will not be singing today. Okay. I recently had a conversation with someone who'd never been to a funeral. I was weirdly envious. They'd never lost anyone they were close enough to that they had to attend his or her funeral, and also a little sad that maybe they'd never been close enough to mourn anyone in that way. I've been going to funerals since I was tiny. These weren't enjoyable experiences, obviously, but just a part of life. You celebrate the dead with crying, prayers, and chicken. My cousins and sisters and I didn't marry until our 30s, so there weren't a lot of family weddings growing up, but there were a lot of funerals. That's when we would see all the distant relatives, the ones who definitely related to us in some way no one could actually point out. But it was cool because they were family. That's your cousin. No, I don't know how. Just say hello and ask if he wants some chicken. The first funeral I remember going to was my great granddaddy Harrison's when I was about 5. And from there, it seemed like at least one. There was one at least one a year. We went to so many that they started to feel normal, a thing you had to do once in a while, like going to the dentist. Unlike dentist visits, funerals, at least in the Black Baptist world I grew up in, are a social occasion. Not a happy occasion, but one that feels like a reunion. As with any other reunion, you wonder what you weighed the last time you went compared to what you weigh now, and you hope that no one says anything about it. And you check to see if you have some good shoes, or maybe you buy some new shoes, and you make sure to ask someone about so and so's marriage because you've been hearing things. It's all of this with a coffin. About 99% of the funerals I've been to in my life are Black Baptist funerals. Two were Jewish ones. For my mother-in-law Sharon and now for Scott. Sharon's was the traditional Jewish ceremony about 24 hours after she died. There was the shoveling of the dirt, the beautiful Hebrew prayers, and the folk sitting Shiva. The only thing that made it somewhat untraditional, perhaps, was the black daughter-in-law, who'd been in the family for only 6 months and had to keep asking people what was going on, making the rest of the family act as tour guides through their own grief. I feel slightly guilty about that. I couldn't be helped. People were asking me what time the kiddush was, and shoving plates of Nova at me. I mean, lox. It's lox, right? See, I'm bad at this. I couldn't keep the names of the fish straight. I didn't know what the kiddush was, and I felt like I was this way, way up here in the advanced Jewish grieving class when I sort of had the books for the 101 class unopened in my bag. I was, in turn, the same sort of guide for Scott at the black funerals in my family. He was right next to me at my father's and grandfather's, plus he was there at all the wakes and the viewings, which were the day before the funerals, and transformed a simple act of mourning into a comfort food festival. I guess there are some similarities to the Jewish tradition where there are Shiva plates and 7 days of mourning, whereas we have 2 days of intensely focused pain and chicken. My mother and I call this the chicken of bereavement, where the healing power of poultry and heavily salted pig accented greens solve the wounds of grief. But back to the pain. If you've ever seen a sitcom or a movie about a black funeral where everyone's freaking the hell out and calling on the Lord and jumping in the grave as the casket is being lowered to the ground, well, that, can I say a bad word? That shit is real. I can't generalize the experiences of all black people and their mourning practices, and maybe my family's just incredibly melodramatic. My friend Tess, an Italian American reporter who was raised Catholic, covered a black funeral once, and her first reaction was, "Oh my God, did they just find out?" Because the level of rawness was what you might see in the ER department the minute someone was pronounced dead. Scott said he got the emotion of my family funerals, but there's some aspects he didn't quite understand, like the open casket and the wake and the funeral being on separate days. "Why are you spreading it out?" he said. "Y'all do this for 7 days," I said. 7 days at home. 1 hour or so at the cemetery. You drag it out. Yes, we do. How can I honor both Scott's traditions and mourn him the way I want? The answer is sort of a hybrid. It isn't going to be within the usual 24-hour period because he can't be buried on the Sabbath and because we're waiting for out-of-town people. My friends recommend an incredible rabbi named Cookie. Did anybody else know Rabbi Cookie? Oh, she was the best. Who was cool with officiating a service planned partially by a black Baptist with theatrical leanings. We agreed to do the service at the funeral home that's attached to the cemetery where we were burying him. The one with all the packages. It's a whole thing about packages like you're going to a spa. It's very weird. Don't plan a funeral. It's weird. I delegate various tasks to whoever wants to deal with them because I don't want to deal with anything. Everyone wants to be useful, so I'm just giving people what they want. We don't have much time, and I'm only tangentially lucid. But I ask around about how much is too much for a Jewish funeral. My family's mourning-related affairs are the perfect combination of sadness, reunion, and unstated tasteful talent show. It's not that we go out of our way to make a production out of it, it's just that all of us happen to be really good singers. And our genuine expressions of love are best conveyed through song. Not a single person turns me down when I ask them to participate. Lynn, who's my twin sister, selects an Amy Grant song that speaks to victory over death, but doesn't specifically mention Jesus as to not insult the Jewish attendees and Scott. Amy Grant is a famous Christian singer. Okay, so Amy Grant at a Jewish funeral. Okay, anyway, um, I've let everyone know that if I hear one note of my heart will go on, there will be a riot from me. It's been decided that I'm not going to speak because I don't want to. I think that I don't think anyone else wants me to either because it could be a tabloid level messy. Scott probably would have enjoyed that, but he's not here to have an opinion. I do think he'd like something sassy, though. At my granddaddy's funeral, there was a woman from the mime ministry, a thing neither of us had imagined existed before that moment, who brought everyone to tears with an interpretive dance of a sad hymn. I don't think Scott would want to be into the mime for his own funeral, but he wouldn't want to be ordinary. I swear to God, there was a mime. And she was so cool. She was so cool because they go from the mime ministry and we go, and my sister was like, go with it, go with it. Because I hadn't been to like, I guess it was the thing they were doing. I don't know. Anyway, so she was very nice. Um, I, I don't like people feeling sorry for me, but in this situation, it's inevitable. I'm the widow in the black dress, stoically dabbing her tears, hoping not to brush my signature Ronnie Spector Egyptian eyeliner into my eye. And rest in peace, Ronnie Spector, by the way. Oh my God, I loved her. Anyway, there is no hiding for me. With so much momentous stuff going on, it's comforting to focus on the minutiae, like the funeral program or choosing what to wear. The latter task I entrust to several of my bossier friends. I try on everything in my closet, including the leopard dress I last wore to a Belmont Stakes party on Palm Beach. Scott liked it because it was curvy and fun with enough boob, but not so much that he had to say, put your boobs away. And he used to say it all the time. I put it on, I could immediately tell my girls were not feeling it. So what? Scott loved me in this dress, I said. No one's gonna screw with that. I have a good argument going, but the boobs wind up being put away anyway. And we start from scratch and go shopping. My friend Kim, who planned my wedding, her name is Kim Walsh Phillips. She's an excellent multimillionaire business coach and writer, and y'all should look into her. She's really awesome. She planned my wedding. She made me prune the performers because, as she said, my wedding was becoming a talent show. She now took over the wardrobe shopping. Even with all the bossy people in my house, no one resists because Kim, an incredibly successful social media marketer, business coach, and author, carries herself in such a way that makes everyone assume that she's in charge. She's even buying the dress, and I don't protest because she knows what she's doing, and free clothes rock. We wound up at the Ann Taylor Loft outlet, out there in Palm Beach Lakes. Okay. My friend Brittany pulls all the dresses, and Nikki and Kim act as the Michael Kors and Heidi Klum of this very special death episode of Project Runway. It's as hilarious as shopping for your husband's funeral can be. The winner is an appropriate houndstooth dress, sleeveless and in a size that I hate having to buy. But it's pretty and I don't have to pay for it. We then go to a shoe store where the clerk asks if I'm interested in something sexy. Not for this occasion, Brittany says. As I try not to snort laugh, I love my friends. Besides my friends, one of the other things, how much time do I have? Am I going too long? Is this cool? All right, okay. One of the other things keeping me from being a train wreck is Brooks, whose name is Brooks Robinson, because Baltimore. Okay. His little face gives me life. I can't help worrying about the adoption. We were in the middle of the adoption at the time. I can't help worrying about everything. I'm scared if I look too unhinged, people might think I can't take care of him. I don't think there are people watching me from behind trees or anything, but we'll have at least one social worker visit between Scott dying and the funeral. Even after Scott's buried and everyone goes home, I'll still be a widow and I won't still legally be Brooks's mother. I'm so torn about what Brooks knows and what's not too much or not too much to tell him. He's no dummy. Even at not quite 2, he knows something's up. But I don't know what to say that's not going to be about my grief. That's not going to be about me putting it all on him and making it worse. How can it be worse? I don't know, and I don't want to find out. A couple days after Scott dies, I'm in the driveway answering phone calls because the reception inside our house is awful, and my friend Nikki comes outside. You might want to think about what to tell Brooke, she says. He just asked me, where's Daddy? Oh no, what did you say? I said, let's go find Mommy. So helpful. Okay. This whole time I'm in constant touch with the social workers, all of them from both states. Because this process won't stop just because I'm mourning. One of the social workers from Maryland, a woman I've come to depend on, assures me that Scott's death won't affect my chances because single women, especially relatives, adopt all the time. And when our local social worker comes to make her visit, she doesn't even come in. She just has me bring the baby outside to take a photo of him to prove he's still okay, and hugs me quickly and leaves. They're all being accommodating. It's not a promise, but it's nice. Um, I decide Brooke should be in daycare every day leading up to the funeral because he has a routine, and at least one of us should get to be normal. People have showed up for the funeral so fast and in such large numbers, I don't have any time to come up with an explanation for why they're all in the house. He's still looking for Scott, still craning his little neck around the corner, especially when he hears a male voice, and it's never the voice he wants. I know how you feel, kid. Yeah, I'm gonna skip the part. Okay, because it's getting long. Okay, the day of the funeral finally arrives against my wishes, but I obviously can't stop shit from happening. I find that Brooks has a bad cough. He should go to the doctor, so we don't have to go to the funeral then, I say. That goes over about as well as you'd expect on this Sunday morning, about 3 hours before the service, as everyone else is getting ready for the funeral. My mom and I drive Brooks to the burbs for a walk-in visit. They're going to start the funeral without you, my mother said. Well, they could if they wanted to. No such luck. The doctor we see is not Brooks' usual doctor, but she smiles at me warmly. I wonder if she recognizes me from the newspaper. Or maybe she just sees an overwhelmed mother having to hold it together. Do you know how long this is going to take? I say, maybe too abruptly. Do you have somewhere to be? She asks. Perhaps wondering what party I was trying to get to that's more pressing than my child's health. Well, since you asked, yes, I say my husband's funeral. That's an honest answer, and I admit, particularly when I think of someone being an ass, I make sure to drop facts like that. Where's this credit card payment? Well, it's my husband's card, and he died, so the bill we got from the ER for that visit where he actually died, that was not a fun phone call, at least not for me. Well, it was for me. Anyway, because, oh, by the way, they did not get paid. They sent it to addressed to him. And I was like, I opened it and said, he can't open this because he died in your ER. So, and they were like, oh, we're sorry. And they took it off. So that was great. Anyway, this doctor is trained to deal with distraught parents, so she squeezes my hand, asks if I'm okay. You know, human things. What can I do to help? I ask. It's so hard to say with his father's death. She went to med school. She knows what I mean. He's too young for therapy. He doesn't know what's happening. But you need therapy. You need to be healthy. If you're good, he'll be good. I promised to look into that and gather my kid, his meds, and my mom and get back on the road to do that thing I don't want to do. Doing that thing I don't want to do. Okay, thank you. And by the way, the forward is a line from That Thing You Do, because that's my favorite movie. I say to Brooks and Scott, we got something snappy. Yeah, I'm obsessed with that movie. Anyway, my mother, I said, do I really have to go? Yes, you do, my mother says. I had to go to your daddy's funeral, and no one let me go to Key West. You'll be fine. Because I could say, can we go to Key West? How long would it take to just get in the car and drive and be there in 5 hours? Okay. It's not the first or last time during this whole grief thing my mother has been the subtle, strong voice of reason. She's been talking me off ledges my whole life. No one expected me to be standing perched on this particular ledge, but she's been there too, and she knows how to get me down. We drive to the cemetery and park on the side next to a hearse. Do you think that's for us? I whispered. Shit. This is real. My mom gets Brooks out of the car. I hand him off to his babysitters, Lana and Joel, who've been his babysitter since he was 6 months old, hoping that being with him make this less weird. Kills me that Brooks had less than 2 years with Scott, the person whose world he'd come to define. My husband loved me fiercely, but I say without reservation, he would have sacrificed me to a dragon in a heartbeat if it meant doing so meant he got to save his boy, and I'm fine with it. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the funeral director explains it's customary for the widow to inspect the body to make sure it's actually her husband. I didn't know that. Okay, I wish there was some way to delegate this task, but it's not negotiable. Scott's lying there in his austere wooden casket, eyes closed in his Brooks Robinson jersey, and a nice pair of pants from a suit that he loved. He'd be mad at me about breaking up the suit, but he doesn't get a say. You die on me, I pick your outfit. The look is complete with his Ravens flip-flops. He looks good. He looks quiet. He looks like he's not going to wake up. My sister and my mom and Scott's brother Josh are behind me, and I can tell the funeral director is taken aback. I'm told at most Jewish funerals, only the widow or the parents of the deceased view the body. This is a massive departure from my tradition, where the body does at least two shows: the wake and the funeral. Open casket and all. If it were someone from my side of the family, the whole crew would be in here, filing past the casket, or crying, or putting baseball cards in his hands, or snapping photos. We grieve in our own ways. My family's is just full of flair. I lean over and simply whisper goodbye, Scotty, and the lid is closed. I'm not ready. I'm never going to be ready. Funeral's happening with or without me, so we might as well get started. Okay, my aunt Debbie and my uncle Lester, both Baptist pastors, tell beautiful stories about how chatty and lovely Scott was. He never knew a stranger, and he made everyone feel comfortable, as if that was his job. It feels good to know that even now, my family still gets him. My sister's Amy Grant song, called Nothing Is Beyond You, is moving and as genuine as I wanted. Although I have to look away, eyes full of water, when she hits the line, "Death has lost its sting," because all I can say is, has it? Has it really? I look at my watch and know we're getting into the end of the program, which is supposed to clock in at about 30 minutes, so we can get to the graveside and burial. I'm not opposed to delaying that part, but if we can't stop it, we might as well get on with it. Rabbi Cookie explains to all of us the reason Jews shovel dirt on the casket of a loved one is that it's the final mitzvah, the thing the person cannot do for him or herself. The best mitzvah, its mitzvahs are a thing that we should be ranking, happens before we leave the funeral home. The rabbi calls Scott's cousin Kinney up to make some remarks being something I always thought were brief. No one has explained this to Kinney. He's such a good dude. The first story I'm going to tell, he starts, I go, the first? I hissed to my sister. Is he doing a bit? Au contraire, what follows is not a bit, it's a roast. It's a gong show act, and it's exquisite. Kinney, he mentions that Scott's final gift to him was to die on his birthday. It's true. Tells us about the cousin to whom he was basically a brother. He discusses his sports obsessions, his hilariously bad driving, the family tradition of trying to jinx each other's sports bets, and his devotion to his niece and nephews, two of whom are sitting protectively behind me. Well, that's nice, I say to Lynn, assuming that we're done now. We are not. I look at Kinney. He fumbles with his phone, raises it to the mic. So for my first song, oh wow, I glance at Rabbi Cookie, who looks confused, and I have to smile. If Scott's watching this from somewhere, he's surprised it's my family. It's his family running out the funeral clock and not mine. The first song is that sad song from the Fast and the Furious '87, or whatever it was, the one released after Paul Walker died. It starts, "It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again." I hate that song. Okay, it was just too much. I'm not in a place to wax philosophic about the blissful future conversations with my husband, who should be laying out his clothes for his first day of work, not hanging out in the afterlife. But this song and My Heart Will Go On have been emphatically banned from this function because they're just too much. But this is Kinney's expression of grief, and I can't very well rush him and stomp on his phone till the music goes away. When it's over, he says, "This is one Scott's favorite. I think you all know it." He presses play again. Nothing happens. Oh no, I think. Oh no, this has to work. Immediately, I know this is Kinney's mitzvah. It's all of our mitzvahs for Scott, to make this funeral the show-stopping, arm-waving encore of his life. None of us want to be here, but we have to be. This is the last thing we can do for Scott, besides leave here, not completely screw up the lives we get to live and that he doesn't. Kinney takes a breath and fumbles with the phone some more, and Rabbi Cookie assists. After a few moments, he tries again, smiles. Oh, okay. "It's a sing-along," he says. "Everybody, come on up. Leslie, Lynn, y'all know this one." And it starts, "Well, we're moving on up to the east side, to a deluxe apartment in the sky." Okay. Oh, yeah. And soon, 250 people of various races, faiths, ages, and familiarity with Scott's 1970s TV obsession rise to their feet and begin singing along to the theme of the Jeffersons. There is stomping, there is laughter, there is joy. Big stadium Valhalla joy that cannot be contained. Nobody wants to be here celebrating the end of Scott's life. They're celebrating his life, period. His totality, his awesomeness. And we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I look over around the beans not burning on the grill part, and Rabbi Cookie is stomping along. We end on a high note, having finally got a piece of the pie, and everyone's singing and cheering, and I'm laughing so hard I can't separate the happy tears from the sad ones. So I take them all together, and I hope I don't drown in them. this seems like good practice.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, do we have? How are we doing on time? Do we have time for
I kept talking, I'm sorry.
one or two questions? Anybody have a question, or should we go right to the buying books and getting books signed? And
Just one question? Anyone? Anybody? Yes.
A couple of years now, how has that changed your perception of people, how they deal with grief and dying?
Oh, I think your question was that COVID, since COVID hasn't changed my reception to grief. I think that humans are really resilient. And I think that we've come in different ways, I think, through this thing. But I think that we had this moment where for so long we couldn't get to people, we couldn't see people. And so things like grief groups popped up on Zoom and discussion groups on Twitter and Facebook. And I think that we connected because we needed to be connected to people. And I think that COVID, it canceled a lot of funerals. My godmother died of COVID and in the early days. And they had to do her memorial service on Zoom. But they did it like her husband's nieces and nephews were literally all around the world, and they figured out how to record a hymn together. One of them was like in Australia playing the guitar, and it was like a violin solo. It was nuts, and it was so cool. And it's like people figured it out, and it's people have. I think because we still don't know where this is going to end or when it's going to end. I think that like the choice is to either continue to like be in a place of grieving and mourning, or to like kind of work your way through it. We have to be honest about it, but we also have to kind of keep moving forward. And I think that the resilience of some of the best of us, I think, has been really shocking and really comforting and impressive.
yeah, well, thank you so much for that question. And real fast, thank you to my student. He wore his Starry outfit, so that's why I made him come. I said, you wore the outfit. You gotta get some attention. So.
Are you the guy that was wearing the Pop-Tart shirt?
Yes.
Yes, hi. I kept calling him Pop-Tart guy. And we didn't go, oh my God, stop. So it's nice to see you.
All right, well, why don't we thank Leslie for her wonderful talk.
And I will not be hugging most people because I will be doing a lot of this. So if you want an emphatic fist, elbow bump, please come see me. Yes.
Yes, and her books are for sale right over here, and then she'll be signing books. And then please do join us. We have lovely reception here for you, so help yourself. And thank you so much for coming.
Way back to the park.